Continues next in our 1-hour heating and air conditioning weather center. Here's our meteorologist, Steve Williams.
Cloudy skies today, a little snow this afternoon, little or no accumulation, the high 38. Intermittent snow tonight, 2 to 4 inches, low 20. Clouds and cold, snow and flurries tomorrow, another 1 to 2, and the high tomorrow, 24. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
25 at O'Hare. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Bolshevik Bernie on top of New Hampshire last night.
Our campaign is not just about beating Trump. It is about transforming this country.
Yeah, you may want to just keep it about beating Trump, because that whole country transformation thing is what has Bernie bumping up against a relatively low ceiling, in my view, including basically on his home turf in New Hampshire, where he narrowly edged out Mannequin Pete.
And if you look at the delegate count, Mannequin Pete, Bernie tied.
Vulnerable Americans do not have the luxury of pursuing ideological purity over an inclusive victory.
Well, I mean, honestly, this gobbledygook has got to stop.
Yeah, he's a walking refrigerator magnet. But here's the thing about that. My sense is that Dem primary voters and caucus goers, they have bought into the socialism, but they want to switch out the Bolshevik for the Trojan mayor. There's a recognition that Bernie may not be the salesman for all the big government gambits that we otherwise support. You know, you got to soft pedal it, like President Obama did, like Mayor Pete is doing. And so the question becomes, coming out of New Hampshire, can Mayor Pete leverage his performances in Iowa and New Hampshire in states that so far are less interested in his candidacy, South Carolina and Nevada, coming up in reverse order? And can Joe Biden hold on and stay in this race with wins? And he needs wins in both of those states. How much does he need to win? Well, last night for his New Hampshire election party, he was in South Carolina talking about Nevada.
I just spoke to our folks up in New Hampshire, and they did a good job. But I want to tell you, the people of Nevada are watching, and I want to make it clear we praise their diversity as a state, and I'm going to be out there seeing them very soon. Tonight, though, we just heard from the first 2 of 50 states, 2 of them. Not all the nation, not half the nation, not a quarter of the nation, not 10%.
125th, yeah, we got it.
2.
Yeah, 2. Is that what it was?
Where I
2
come
again?
from, that's the opening
Iowa,
bell, not the closing bell. And the fight to end Donald Trump's presidency is just beginning.
All right, yeah.
And in New Hampshire, third place matters. And the term yesterday was the Klobentum. Get it? Amy
No,
Klobuchar,
I
she's
don't.
gaining momentum.
Donald
Keep workshopping
Trump's
that.
worst nightmare is that the people in the middle, the people who have had enough of the name calling and the mudslinging, have someone to vote for in November.
And basically, she introduced herself to people that weren't really familiar with her work.
Hello, America. I'm Amy Klobuchar, and I will beat Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And they chanted, Amy, Amy,
Yeah,
Amy.
it's a real prairie fire. Again, we'll see if she can do anything other than surprise in New Hampshire. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Gil Barndollar. He is a New Hampshire native. He's also a fellow at the Catholic University of America Center for the Study of Statesmanship and a contributor to the American Conservative. Gil, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. So, give us your handle as a New Hampshire native on what the first, second, and third place performances mean for the Democrat primary.
Well, I think the interesting thing, I was at Bernie's rally and victory party last night, which was an interesting vibe. A lot of nervous energy as the vote count crept up, but the lead started to shrink. The interesting thing is that it's still going to be a very crowded field going to the next two primaries. You've only had a couple of second, third tier really candidates drop out, and you're going to have a packed lane, especially in the center, going into Nevada and South Carolina.
Why did New Hampshireans, if I don't even know if that's what you call yourself, or people of New Hampshire, rally around Amy Klobuchar? Because she had a surprising third place
Staters
finish.
I think I was surprised, actually. The debate, I think, really did help her, even on that dead zone on Friday night. There were a lot of undecided voters, I think as a result of a big field going into the last few days of the primary. Potentially up to 40% of voters were still making up their minds, according to some polling. And I think there is, as I think you both said, there's a hunger for sort of a centrist candidate. Electability is still, I think, foremost on the minds of many, if not most, Democrats. And I think she sort of filled that lane as people had concerns about Biden and about Buttigieg.
Well, also, she did get the Manchester Union leader endorsement. So, I mean, so she did have a little pub going, a little momentum going, something to bandy about on the trail.
Yeah, she's had same thing happened in Iowa, and of course she got half of that kind of weird New York Times split endorsement. So that stuff has helped her.
And
too.
that half endorsement from the New York Times did nothing for Elizabeth Warren. She was polling high about a year ago interstate and just completely fell flat. What happened?
Yeah, as I wrote, I think Warren is, an interesting case. I think she, in a lot of ways, you may not like them or agree with them, but certainly had some of the most fleshed out policy proposals. Had a real, and I think relatively genuine, despite the Cherokee stuff and everything else, had a relatively genuine identity as a fighter for working families and a late in life politician. But she, I think, in trying to please all camps and trying to become someone that was palatable to the Democratic establishment, her campaign was sort of taken over by the sort of the Hillary Clinton alumni crowd and these people that really don't know how to win.
And for as much talk as there is about authenticity, particularly as it is used to explain Bernie Sanders loyalists, Mayor Pete is doing an impersonation of 2007, 2008 Barack Obama, but the people seem to like this.
Yeah, no, I saw him out at his veterans event on Wednesday, and personally I find it very, very empty. I think there's very little substance there. He's tough to pin down, even on something like foreign policy, even Afghanistan, which is part of his supposed reason for being in the race and the hinge of his foreign policy expertise. He won't say anything of substance. But it is, to me, it's a less savvy, less groundbreaking version of Obama.
Is anybody concerned about his age? I mean, he quoted the other day saying, I didn't watch the impeachment trial because I was turning on cartoons. And then last night he said, I respect Bernie Sanders. I have been following him or have been an admirer of his work since high school.
We've all been an admirer of his work since high school. Well, at least not an admirer, but we've been following his work since high school. We all have.
I guess he's been around for a long time, but does his age concern anybody besides Dan Brock?
I think it probably does. It is a funny dynamic, though, that he's got that weird inverted support where Buttigieg gets a lot of support, at least so far, from Boomer and even older Democrats, and is pretty broadly disdained, if not in some ways hated by his own generation and younger. Millennial voters flock to Bernie, who's 78 years old, and the older crowd is more apt to vote for Buttigieg. So it's a weird kind of thing there. You hear the joke that he's an old person's idea of what a young person is.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And so with respect to how this race is shaping up, I mean, could it be as much talk as there's been? Who is going to be Bernie's foil? Will it be Mayor Pete or Mayor Bloomberg? Could it end up being that actually it's Mayor Pete versus Mayor Bloomberg?
Oh, absolutely. If Klobuchar complicates things, right? I mean, I'm of the opinion, and I wrote at the beginning of the week after Iowa, I'm of the opinion that Biden's pretty close to a dead man walking. I mean, stranger things have happened, but the idea that he's going to resurrect his campaign overnight in Nevada and South Carolina to an even greater degree, I don't think that's going to happen. So I suspect it's going to come down to a knife fight early between Klobuchar and Buttigieg over the next couple of states into Super Tuesday, and then Bloomberg lurking in the background for all that money and all those favors he's calling in.
But Bernie Sanders supporters, the ones that I talked to over the weekend, they cannot stand Pete Buttigieg. They feel like he's going to be the Hillary and steal Bernie's thunder, and they are not going to support. They told me flat out, whoever wins a Democratic nominee, if it's not Bernie Sanders, we're going to stay home. We're not going to support him or her.
Yeah, I mean that's the charge you're hearing, and the idea that Sanders is holding the party hostage. I do think to be fair, I think Sanders himself does not sound those notes at all. I mean, one of the very first things he said last night in a very kind of quick, truncated.
Oh, Gil, we're losing you there.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
I think one of the first things Sanders said last night was that he and his supporters would support the Democratic nominee no matter who it was. And
yeah, that's right.
The centrality of beating Trump. So I think he's certainly not going to sound those notes, and that fear may be a little overblown among sort of the center of the Democratic Party.
Whichever socialist is nominated, are we basically looking at a rerun of 2016? I mean, is it, as Peggy Noonan wrote a couple of weeks ago, does it feel like 2016 all over again, except this time with full employment?
In which way do you mean? I didn't see the Noonan column.
Well, I mean, just sort of in terms of the dynamic between the two parties, all of the institutions that have essentially maintained their position from 2016. So all of the talk for, get the media be an example, the Beltway press corps. We're going to go out in the hustings and figure out what we didn't see happening in Middle America to help explain Trump's 2016 victory. Well, that lasted for about 2 weeks before they became the formal communications arm of the resistance and have been aiding and abetting the Democrat storyline for the last 3+ years. And the approach to from the left and all of these candidates is not to moderate and make an appeal to coal miners in West Virginia or Rust Belt middle-income families. It's to go full-on trans rights and full-on cultural Marxism and full-on government takeovers, taking 180 million people's private health insurance, for example. So there have been no lessons learned, arguably on either side, from 2016, so we're setting up for a rerun.
Well, I think a lot depends on who the Democratic candidate is. I mean, the dynamics of a race with, let's compare Bloomberg and Bernie, are completely different, right? Bloomberg runs a very centrist, suburbs-friendly kind of establishment campaign, has a lot of positive media attention, obviously throws around a ton of money. A Sanders campaign would be a very different gambit, would be a blue-collar insurgency, looking at really pumping turnout numbers up, about getting people on the sidelines and younger voters out. And that's the gamble of a Sanders campaign. But that is an anti-establishment campaign, a campaign that would draw probably tepid media support. In spite of how much many or most of the media really hate Trump, I think that the Sanders nonetheless has a lot of skeptics in the kind of center left. So those would be two very different races, and I don't think certainly a Sanders-Trump election would be a rerun of 2016. It'd be a very different kind of animal.
Well, a different kind of animal in what sense?
Well, just in that they would both be seeing two campaigns. I mean, Trump, in a funny way, has to decide whether he's doing this "Keep America Great," rest on my successes and laurels and run a pretty safe campaign, or whether he's going to keep the secret to success was that kind of angry, insurgent, anti-establishment campaign. But it's a little tough to run against the establishment when you're governing, at least in theory. Because of how strange his administration has been, he could run an anti-government outsider campaign as the president's sort of semi-plausible. But Sanders is certainly going to run that kind of campaign.
Yeah. All right. He is Gil Barndollar, New Hampshire native, fellow at the Catholic University of America's Center for the Study of Statesmanship and contributor to the American Conservative. Gil, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great talking to you. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Message and data rates may apply. Please don't text while driving.
If you've been in business more than 20 minutes, you've probably printed your logo on all kinds of promotional products. We all know logos work because they're on everything from the top of skyscrapers to the bottom of shoes. Ever wondered why? Or how to best use your logo to grow your business? Let us show you today for free. We're 4imprint, promotional product experts at your service. We're giving away the latest issue of